That's Max from BackerKit. And for those who don't know, BackerKit is a tool that helps you manage shipping out your rewards and coordinating reward fulfillment and also surveys. So Max has been in the business for a while, and he's created an awesome tool after doing a successful Kickstarter, and he's happy enough to share some tips with us on how to run a campaign and also what value his product brings for creators. So I'd like to start off by asking you, when you guys started the company, why you started it right after your Kickstarter campaign, and sort of who the company, who the product is for.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I mean, really, I started BackerKit with my partner Rosanna Yao, I guess January of 2013. So we've been at it, a year and a half now. But really, the entirety of the product kind of came after my own experiences and frustrations with my own Kickstarter project. Was actually a project called Diaspora, which back in 2010 for a while was the #1 project on Kickstarter. We were the first people to ever raise $200,000 from 6,500 people on Kickstarter, which back
Congrats.
then was a lot of money. But now that happens 15 times a day on Kickstarter. But yeah, one of the things we noticed that is obviously we had the world's greatest problem on earth, which is thousands of dollars from thousands of people for something we hadn't really finished yet. So turns out that this is a great problem to have, obviously, but the original project was a software project that me and four of my friends were gonna hack on for a summer, and I basically spent the entirety of my time just managing my backers, these people who were super excited about what we were doing, and they wanted to figure out how they could be a part of it and how they could get their stuff, and everything from how do they manage address changes to can I get a second T-shirt to how do I just stay updated with you. And I guess what I didn't realize at the time, and what a lot of project creators don't realize, is that you kind of inherit 15 full-time jobs after you're successful on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So Kickstarter was like 4 people when Diaspora was up, and to some degree Kickstarter is really good at helping you raise money. That's what they do. That's what Indiegogo is, the same story. They're both super great at doing that, but to some degree, like they don't worry so much about how do they help you fulfill and how do they give you tools so you get to focus on making your product awesome rather than
So you guys sort of,
automating.
oh, sorry.
No worries.
I was gonna say you guys sort of scratched your own itch there, like working on a product that really solving a problem that you experience shipping out your rewards.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, I guess I like to kind of jokingly say we're the first people on Earth to see this problem at scale, just because we were the first Kickstarter project of this size. And the reality is actually like projects that are much smaller than Diaspora still have these issues. They're just maybe like a lot of people. A lot of people don't talk about them because to some degree, like they're not the sexy part of the crowdfunding campaign. They're like, nobody's going to admit to saying they spent 15 hours in Excel, like munging the data they got from Kickstarter, or like how many emails they fielded of people wanting to, change their address or change their color after the survey, or randomly doubled their pledge and just assumed you were going to send them 2 items. Because, to some degree, it's like none of them are a big deal. There's so many problems that happen that, you could talk about, and if it was only happened once, it would be no big deal. You just write it on a little post-it note and do it. But when you have to kind of be systematic about, delivering a Kickstarter campaign, and so many people are expecting you to, hit those deadlines, that's something actually that was really interesting. Is when the whole Kickstarter is not a store post came out, I was kind of frustrated because nobody was talking about the fact that, like, yeah, I 100% believe, the creative process takes time, and, to some degree, like, things can be late because making stuff is hard, but nobody was talking about the fact that, I think a lot of Kickstarter projects are late not because they, like, are delayed on actually making the thing, but just there's all this extra work that they weren't anticipating, and they didn't sort of get blindsided to some degree. And some of it, like in 2014, just people shouldn't be doing. They're totally things that can be avoided if you have the right process and the tools at your disposal, which none of these crowdfunding platforms really are providing people.
So let me ask you a question. We talk about these large campaigns raising lots of money, having to ship out rewards to thousands of backers. Who would you say is the sort of ideal customer for you guys? And is there a particular size? Who gets the most sort of bang for their buck with BackerKit, and how, who should consider approaching you guys, and when should they?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, in terms of when you should start thinking about BackerKit, there's an interesting issue with, it's not an issue, it's just kind of like an emerging thing with crowdfunding, and is that if you worry too much about your fulfillment before you launch your campaign, then you're not worrying enough about actually making sure that your campaign is successful. So it's very interesting because these problems you run into, you can't really prematurely optimize them away because you don't have these problems unless you have a successful Kickstarter campaign. So to some degree, the best you can do is stay flexible. We generally engage with projects, maybe halfway point through their campaign when they sort of know they're going to be successful and maybe get a little breathing room to know that they're going to need some of these tools, to anywhere where we engage people, several months after their campaign's over and they sort of realize they have these problems. It's an interesting approach that we kind of have to take because a lot of times people don't, some of the stuff that BackerKit fixes doesn't sound too scary if you don't have these problems, but the thing that's funny is I know that actually every project creator faces all the problems. And I think, if you have more than 200 backers, you need BackerKit. Because to some, and a lot of that depends. If you literally have 300 backers and you're shipping the stuff out next weekend because it's actually totally already made, maybe you could figure it out. But anytime you introduce a lot of latency in between when the project finishes and when you're actually shipping stuff out, and just the actual project complexity and the number of backers, these are sort of all the things. And to some degree, it's actually insanely hard to make a very simple Kickstarter project. You'd be very surprised how little complexity you need to add before it gets really scary as to actually figuring out, everything from like, how many medium red t-shirts do I need across all, of my 15 reward tiers. It's like, these aren't like rocket science questions, but they're questions that you should just be able to know what the answer is and focus on making your thing awesome, not like trying to figure out how you collect all this information. So and to answer your other part, I mean, for bang for your buck, definitely bigger projects, obviously, just like with the scale of what they're doing, and it's like any other kind of when you kind of automate some of your issues, to some degree. If you only have a small scale of an issue, it's actually just easier to, call people on the phone and ask them what they want. But at some point, the automation pays off in droves, and certainly for big projects like, I mean, we're doing Reading Rainbow, which is the most Kickstarter backers ever of any project. They honestly couldn't offer what they decided to offer without using BackerKit.
So sort of segueing there, what functionality do you guys offer for a creator? What sort of tools, whether it's when their backers decide they want to, change the color of one of the rewards, or what are some of the functionality that you guys offer to make this process a little bit simpler for creators?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, kind of the basis of what we BackerKit is a pledge management system. So basically, it's somewhere in between like a simple shopping cart, which is going to validate a lot of, backers' issues, whether it's missing international shipping or changing their address or selecting add-ons or all these things that people are doing on Kickstarter already, right? I mean, I think Kickstarter is a very cool platform because they've defined a very simple set of rules here, but in a lot of ways, backers are sort of hacking the system. Backers and project creators are sort of hacking the system to sort of, build upon those sort of primitives. So basically, the basic premise for backers is really simple: is imports all your information in from Kickstarter or Indiegogo. You use BackerKit surveys, which are a lot more powerful, and the important thing is it like lets you itemize what each of your backers are getting per their responses. So which is, I think, an important sort of untalked about step, that even if you're still using a fulfillment company, they're going to need a very specific format for what their CSV is, and you can't really discern that from the basic Kickstarter export. Basically, they fill out their survey, they select what add-ons, which can be stuff they overpledge for in Kickstarter, which is a very hard problem to solve without something like BackerKit. They can also buy more. A lot of times people, when they're kind of checking out of a Kickstarter process, are in this euphoric moment where they're really excited that this project is actually real rather than, they're sort of giving money to something that might just be like an idea. They put in their address, they do their address validation, they get a nice order confirmation email. Then then for the duration of when you're manufacturing, fulfilling, trying to figure out what your deal is, basically, backers can come back in and make changes to themselves, whether they want to change colors or whatnot. Basically, they can just manage their order, kind of like Amazon figured out about e-commerce in 1999.
Yeah.
To some degree, like some of this stuff isn't super rocket science, but it's a very specific flow because it's actually solving for a bunch of other really boring issues that people kind of have bogged people down. It's of missing certain information or not being validated or not paying international shipping is a huge thing. Even though it's built into Kickstarter, it's still not very bulletproof, which can possibly be. I've seen so many of our customers spend like between 20 and 30% of their funds are on shipping. So missing out some of that can be really detrimental and stressful. Even like billing people who didn't thought they got this and they really want to get this, and they email you and say, oh, I thought I got this reward, I guess I didn't get it, can I PayPal you the difference? And these are just things that it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, and it's a reasonable request, and project creators want to make their backers happy, but they sort of have no tools to do it, and it becomes stressful because they were already stressed about actually making the thing that it was. So on that side, it's basically like you set up BackerKit, all of your backers go through, you get all this nice structured information. Then on the back end for you is you sort of get a dashboard that as a project creator just gives you superpowers to manage all this stuff, figure out how much got ordered, who ordered it, who doesn't have it, who owes you money, who doesn't owe you money, who added extra afterwards. All these questions that project creators need to ask, and helps them sort of slice and dice and make sure that everybody gets exactly what they want and they have all the information to give it there. Another huge problem actually that I need to write a blog post about it, but I like to call it the gift card problem, but this is something that really stresses out even the most pro project creators, is this idea that even when you do send out these Kickstarter surveys or BackerKit surveys, is a bunch of people don't fill them out. So
yeah.
So it's kind of a little bit unnerving. I think a lot of project creators go in saying, okay, I'm going to send out these surveys, everybody's going to fill it out, and then I'm going to ship them all out, and then this project's going to be done in 3 or 6 months or whatever the day is. But in reality, it's like, okay, well, 75% of the people respond to the survey in the first 3 days, which is great, but then there's this endless trickle of people, of this last 15% of people. I wish I was kidding, but for my project I asked for, it was 6,500 people. The project was in June of 2010, and I fulfilled most of the stuff in December 2010. Someone filled out my backer survey on Monday.
Wow.
So now, granted, it's only been 100 people in 2014, which in terms of percentages, is a very small percentage, but is a ridiculous thing to have to keep track of, basically, and figure that out. Even 4 years down the line. I mean, I don't know what the stats.
That's crazy.
It's insane, but if your project is only 100 people, well, maybe that's only 2 people. It's not that big of a deal, right? But I've had customers who've friended everybody on Facebook in order to try to get them to tell them their address so they can at least just ship them the basic thing, I don't know. It's just one of these examples of sort of it's a lot more than people bargain for to some degree.
Now, do you guys? When I was looking on your website, most of the projects I saw were Kickstarter related. You guys obviously also work with Indiegogo. Do you see those same types of problems? Is there a reason there aren't too many Indiegogo projects on your website, or?
I mean, I definitely think Kickstarter it trends towards a lot more of the projects of sort of the size that probably need us. With that being said, I mean, some of our biggest customers are from Indiegogo and CrowdTilt, which are the other 2 platforms we support. I'm not 100% sure why. I mean, what's interesting is all these platforms actually have the same problems. I mean, that's kind of what we're solving. Is if you think about it, crowdfunding just turns commerce on its head, to some degree. Is rather than having a bunch of inventory that you're trying to market and then get out the door, you sort of build up all this demand and money, and then you need to build up the inventory, and then you need enterprise-grade shipping to ship 5,000 orders in one day, rather than this nice, steep climb that you can build up of 5 orders a day, then 10 orders a day, then 15 orders a day. Which is also why it's even scarier to fulfill a Kickstarter project, because you sort of get one shot of doing it right, You don't really get a chance to like learn, um, you know, with like smaller orders. But and I would say, what's also really interesting is the fundamental problems are exactly the same on all three of those platforms, but BackerKit does actually fix a bunch of warts of each of the platforms, which are different for each one. There's things that are good and bad about everything, at least from a fulfillment perspective. But
Cool.
they all have stuff that honestly I wish they would fix, because then I can just focus on providing unique value. But
yeah, yeah. One of the interesting claims I also saw on your site, it said on average, projects using BackerKit increased their total funding by 8.7%. Could you explain that a little bit? I didn't fully understand.
So actually that's an underestimation, because that's actually the additional sales that are generated in BackerKit exclusively, not necessarily what's been enabled by having a lot of add-ons, let's just say. I think there's lots of other add-on numbers around there that kick around of like, if you offer add-ons, it's, adds to your bottom line of your Kickstarter number by 10 or 20%. I'm not sure whatever the most recent claim is. But that 8.6% is people like in additional transactions. So that's upselling people, that's people upgrading their pledge after the Kickstarter campaign's over, that's collecting missing international shipping fees which were owed but not paid.
Okay.
So, to some degree, we haven't had a single customer that BackerKit hasn't like put money in their pocket, in addition to like actually saving them probably hundreds of hours of just, menial labor, let alone like help them not make more, human mistakes and just not have to deal with a lot of issues. Yeah. So it's interesting too, because we totally started the upsell feature not as a way to generate more money, but just as you need a way in order to get backers to get what they want. Sometimes they screw up and like they like want to give you the $5. They're like, I screwed up. I didn't pay the $5 for, I did my math wrong when I was doubling my pledge or something, or, like, how do I give you $5 like to fix this shipping or to like get a second one of these things? We really made it as like a tool to like, not so you have to like, bash it over people's head, but just because these people love you and they want something very specific from you. So you need a tool that lets them sort of, tell you exactly what they want, and then you get nice structured data for it at the end of the day. So, because before, when people do special requests or add-ons, it's like they have all these notes in Kickstarter or Indiegogo that are actually the worst, because you can't systematically fulfill that. You just literally have to go.
It's not scalable.
Yeah, it's not scalable at all. And not to mention, like, another thing that's true about being a project creator is like your backers will figure out how to reach you like every possible conduit ever. Like
it's hard to aggregate all that.
Right. It's like they'll like find your email from college. They'll tweet at you. They'll send you emails. They'll like post on the comments. It's like, please change my color from green to red. You're like, great. I'm more than happy to do it. But then you have to squirrel that information somewhere. Then, because people are consistently filling out your backer survey, you're constantly re-downloading it from Kickstarter, which then you have to rediff your like special notes onto the one that's formatted correctly for your fulfillment house. But then you find like 7 more orders in the time that these are all like they're really dumb problems actually, but they're super aggravating, they're super time consuming, and people make a lot of mistakes. And to some degree, like again, that's kind of my sort of, here at BackerKit, it's like they gave you the money to like make the project awesome, not to like worry about all these kind of dumb details.
Yeah.
So,
okay. That's some great information about your product, and also include links for people that want to check it out and pricing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to talk a little bit too. You've also had the experience of running a successful Kickstarter, and you run into so many problems that creators experience just because they're your customers. So I'd love to get sort of your thoughts on what you learned from your first campaign, and sort of maybe some misconceptions of this is what you thought Kickstarter would be like, and then you get all this traction, and what was it actually like to run the campaign, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, Diaspora is a very much a kind of a fluky campaign. Like Kickstarter was not a thing really, like in when Diaspora went. Like I think when like there was an article in the New York Times about Diaspora when we were in the middle of it, and I think that was the first time Kickstarter was in the New York Times, was the article about Diaspora.
Wow.
So to some degree, like it was definitely like prehistoric Kickstarter time. I think we basically knew nothing what to expect. When we asked for $10,000, I don't actually think we thought we were going to get it, because that seemed extremely high. I think one of my co-founders and I had almost like a fist fight like the night before whether we should actually ask for $8,000 or $10,000, because for some reason we thought that was going to be a big difference. So
where did all of that traction come from? Was it back then Kickstarter had a small community, or did you tap into something larger through like blogs and social media, or where did that sort of tumble?
No, it's literally a fluke. We literally probably between the four of us sent like 7 emails total about it.
So it just traveled by word of mouth?
It just was word of mouth, and I mean we're from New York, and we kind of were tapped into some of the New York tech scene. So I think like it just kind of slowly it didn't slowly, it very quickly emanated from there, and we kind of knew a couple places, but there was no book on social media strategy for crowdfunding. Like none of that had existed. I mean, no project before us had raised more than $50,000 ever. Mm-hmm. It was only from like 1,000 people or something. And the documentary was like about Obama or something. Like, I mean, it was like something very like universal, and like a lot of people could get behind it, I guess. But so yeah, I mean, to some degree, like I'm probably, and our video is, I think, well, actually, I mean, something about the video that's really true is it's a horrible video. It's filmed on a flip cam of us balancing it on an overhead projector in one of our classrooms at school, and like in 17 takes, and it was like 4 in the morning, and we all wanted to like rip each other's throats out by the time we were done with it. You can kind of tell. But the one thing about the video that I think you still could make a pretty, videos have gotten so slick on Kickstarter, but I think that the thing that really resonated with people is just that we were super serious about doing this. Like this was something, I mean, DASP was very much a cause as much as it is like the actual product. But like we were just super serious and super adamant, and our attitude was like, we're gonna do this. If you can help us, that's really cool. Come be a part of this thing that we're gonna do. And like we don't, we had a modest goal. It was, definitely super lofty, but to some degree it was very honest, and I think that that's probably something that I hope continues, even in the fancy ones, and I think it does. Even the fancy videos now that are super well edited, like the thing that I think you got to be is you just got to be super honest, and it's about you talking to people who want to believe in your story. So,
So you guys, you sort of enter and see campaigns when they've, are trending towards being successful, or they've already hit their goal. Have you seen sort of any, I guess, commonalities between campaigns, or you mentioned the slick video. You deal a lot with rewards. Do you see any sort of commonalities with regards to the structure of campaigns or how creators speak to the audience?
I mean, I don't know. We try not to like actually on purpose pay too much attention to that, because I think I've seen great things that I thought were great. Like I can't predict, whether something's honestly going to be successful or not. I mean, like the only thing that you can use is the momentum of their backers, and the pledge is rapidly growing. So we try not to be too editorial about that. Definitely, the one thing, at least from a fulfillment perspective, I would say that, I mean, obviously it depends on what vertical you're in, but you still want to keep your offering, I think, relatively simple. I would say, now granted, like for instance, like board games, obviously the people who love board games are super detail-oriented, and a lot of those projects have hundreds of SKUs at the end of the day that they're offering. And it's interesting because you see a lot of the really successful projects have hundreds of SKUs, and then you also see a bunch of projects that barely succeed but like have more SKUs than they have backers, because they've tried to like offer all this complexity to sort of cater to every single permutation of everything. I would say that like good projects, and certainly if you're doing one of your first projects, you want to keep the items you're offering and the options like to a minimum. Don't go crazy on colors. Don't go too crazy on sizes of things if you don't have to. Like, certainly for your first project, you should be able to probably validate it on a couple different versions. And just inherently by doing that and not adding too much complexity, you'll probably get a chance to learn a lot and figure out where you can increase complexity and where you can't. But I definitely see a lot of projects that are too complicated, have too many rewards, probably don't do as well. But it's hard because you could point to a bunch of things that were really successful that added all this complexity once they were already successful. So a case in point was like the Reading Rainbow campaign. When it started, it was pretty tidy. It had, 10 or 15 reward tiers. They all made sense. They were very oniony. Obviously, they blew past their goal instantaneously, and then they sort of like, at the end of the day, you look at their project now, it's like ridiculously complex, but they only did that after the fact. So I think that that's an interesting distinction. Like one of the good features of Indiegogo and Kickstarter is you can always add complexity once you get to a certain point.
That's
And
a good point.
I wouldn't build it in at the beginning because you can always bring it back later.
So one of the other things with regards to adding complexity, you guys charge on a percentage basis, and when you're launching a campaign, you have Kickstarter fees, you have payment processing fees, you have the actual cost of developing the rewards. A lot of people, when they see people raising $200,000 on the news, they think that they can just like go off to some island and sip margaritas or whatever. What do you typically see as like an average profit margin, or how should people budget in your expenses as well into their campaign? Should people give backers like a razor thin very discounted product, or should it be retail value?
I think that's a great question. I would say that the most important thing when pricing your rewards to some degree is obviously you have to give yourself a cushion. Like nobody wins if you run out of money during your whole process. So, especially with shipping, I think a lot of people try to do really complicated. They're like, oh, well, it doesn't take that much to ship to Canada in comparison to Australia. But I think people end up shooting themselves in the foot just because so many people don't pay it if you make it this weird optional, like look it up kind of strategy. So along the similar lines, I say, always round up, just have a flat, like one international shipping price, and some people will complain, but net, you're going to come out okay. I think the interesting thing about crowdfunding that I've seen from being in this business now for a year and a half is the money you raise is great, but the actual real asset you get at the end of the day is not even the product you get to build or the money, but it's the people that basically have opened up their wallet and believe in whatever the hell you're doing. Because as long as you do right by them, you can take them and do other things with them, whether it's do another campaign or launch the second product you're going to do or whatnot. I mean, we have some of my customers that I really love are these people who've found this crazy niche of being repeat project creators. And to some degree now what they have is they basically think of a new thing that they want to make, and they basically just do another project, and it's like insta-funded. And then they have this giant ball of people that and they make a different thing every 3 months, or maybe it's the same thing that kind of riffs on it. But the most important thing is about getting that constituency of people that like what you do, that are engaged with you as a person, because Kickstarter is as much about your story as much as it is the thing that they're getting. And so definitely for first-time project creators, I would say like if you're focusing on trying to come out of this with a profit to some degree, I think that you're just going to be really stressed and make not the right decisions, which are optimizing for your backers' happiness. Because in the lifetime value of this, that's actually what's going to help you be beneficial. Just like any other business thing, you can't think of one campaign as a sort of a single solo thing. Obviously, don't hemorrhage money, right? Nobody wins on that. But especially for first-time project creators, because there will be a million issues that, I mean, I know what they are, but you don't. Like that you're gonna run into, and you know what? Just everybody runs into them. It's not like there's a lot of people don't like to talk about it because they feel like it's like shameful or they're not good at it, but it's just there are so many, honestly, like dumb things that happen to project creators that they get all tripped up on, and it costs money, but you need experience and you need to know how to do it, and you need to have the right tools to solve these problems. Because some of them, it's like it's not even like you did anything wrong. Like that's I think the thing is like crowdfunding is hard. Like yes, Kickstarter and Indiegogo have made it ridiculously easy to raise money and also validate an idea, but they haven't revolutionized how hard it is to actually bring a product to market, which is still totally kind of exactly the same. In fact, it still is a little bit easier, but it's still ridiculously hard.
It's also hard, I think, too, because a lot of creators are launching these projects when they have a full-time job. They're trying to do it after work. They're trying to do it on the weekends, and you have all these problems to deal with in addition to that. And after a long workday, it's really difficult. I put my hat off to them. The other thing I just want to comment on was you talking about building a crowd, from having a Kickstarter campaign. I also think a huge component is when you actually get these widgets or this device or whatever it is out into the hands of people. That's really when the feedback loop sort of begins, and you can get feedback from all of these people on whether or not they like the product, what they don't like, and how you can inform that to iterate on the next version. So.
Right. Right. I mean, absolutely. Like, it's definitely like, while a crowdfunding campaign is like 30 days, that's just, I mean, we say it like jokingly, but I'm actually totally serious. Like, I mean, when you do a Kickstarter campaign, the 30 days the Kickstarter are live are the easy part. And even if you're successful in getting your funding, like, you are not a successful project creator yet, right? You've sort of just strapped a time bomb to your chest. That to some degree now you have to make good on it, right?
Yeah.
It is on you, and I mean, that's one of the things I like working with all my customers, because it's just because, like, I mean, Kickstarter project creators are awesome because they want to see these things become real in the world, and that's something I totally identify with. Why it's a fun group of people to serve, but they want this more than any of their backers. That's why they're there, putting up with all this crazy stuff. So, I think that people inherently want to do good, but to some degree, they do get caught up in being like, well, I gotta, they're thinking about the money, and sometimes they're even thinking about the product. Because I've actually seen more project creators who like have more of a model where it's like, I only make 10% more than what I sold on Kickstarter of this particular item, and in 3 months I'm just going to invent something different and do the same thing, and like build it that way. Which I think is really interesting, because a lot of people think it's like, oh, I'm going to do it to bootstrap my product and then try to get my product in an Apple store or some Best Buy or something, And I think that those people sometimes even have more trouble. Now, granted, there's totally outliers, of people who did get it in the Apple store and are awesome, but I think the new space is for the people who've created this ball of 100, 200, either 100 or 1,000 people, that basically just like love the story. They love their aesthetic, and they just invent a little widget that's a little bit different every 6 months, and it's just like a really cool, honest thing. And they like being part of that story. And I mean, that to me is like a very crowdfunding native model that I think is pretty cool.
That's really cool. I do think it's a shame it's become a little bit commercialized recently. Like, I always think of Kickstarter crowdfunding like going back to like Woz, Steve Jobs and Wozniak, when they were sort of like hacking together, their first computer, and just sort of like seeing like, do people like this, and people wanting to support it. Like, I think of that as like the ultimate sort of crowdfunding project, that people believe in the mission and the prototype and that kind of stuff, and yeah, they want to support it. So it's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly like the validation is a huge thing that I think crowdfunding is really good. And I mean, it's something that I'm excited about too. I mean, it's sort of like why we founded this whole company. Like, right now, yeah, we're helping solve some of the warts of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but to me, like, crowdfunding is, probably a lot more simpler at its core than what Indiegogo and Kickstarter are doing. I mean, in a lot of ways, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, they're teaching consumers what crowdfunding is, but it's also a bunch of other things that it's not necessarily like core to the problem, right? Rewards might not be core to crowdfunding. 30-day limit might not be core to crowdfunding. The video, the description, the sort of project-esque based thing, these might not actually be the core of what crowdfunding really is. Because to me, the magical thing is sort of getting a batch of people to give you money for something up front, which lets you validate demand, but then not only that, but also get an economy of scale, so then you can, make something, even though it was going to previously be an artisanal thing, but now since you can sell 1,000, you can actually get a reasonable price to make the thing, so it's not, $100 a unit or whatever. So, I mean, I'm excited, but I mean, I kind of believe, we're in like the MySpace days of crowdfunding right now.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And to some degree, I'm really grateful that Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they're teaching people sort of these basic tenets. But, maybe in 5 years we're not going to talk about crowdfunding, because in a lot of ways, crowdfunding is just like a smart way to sell and buy something, right?
Yeah, I think it's a cool way to sort of like how Reddit puts deciding what's popular into the community's hands. Letting creators sort of be showcased that might otherwise not be. I think that's a really cool aspect of it. But
Well, I
I
mean,
got,
yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, if you think about it, it reduces risk. I mean, obviously, there's some risk of the project creator never fulfilling, but to some degree, like, um, a backer doesn't have to buy something that isn't going to get any money and therefore be like, totally a failure, right? They're not going to be the only person who buys an item or something, like at least there's going to be 500 people who are in the same boat as them, right?
yeah,
And project creators too. Nobody wants to like spend a year of their life making something that nobody wants, which is something that happens right now, right? Like some people in their basement before crowdfunding, would spend a whole year working on something, and then nobody would buy it.
yeah.
So.
Well, cool. Those are most of the questions I have for you. If I've left anything out you want to share about problems that you've experienced from dealing with the fulfillment side, or I know you guys had a promotion going on for creators that reach out to you before their project's finished, I think.
Yeah,
So if you'd like to share any updates or things for your company, be love to hear.
yeah. I mean, we've just been rolling out a lot of stuff. Something that we're kind of rolling out that was a big thing that we saw a lot of people screwing up on was you can now buy shipping through BackerKit, which turns out crowdfunders have really interesting specific issues with if they're trying to DIY fulfill themselves. The PSA is the most expensive place to buy shipping is going to the post office, so never do that. Turns out postal world is totally crazy. Anyways, BackerKit, we've partnered with some people. We've gotten reduced rates, but our postage system is built off the fact that you're going to have 70% of your packages are going to be the same as another package that you're also sending out, right? So BackerKit can basically compute, like you have 72 packages, that's a medium red t-shirt and a blue bauble, which can, some of our early customers have said it's sped up their fulfillment by like 5 times, because then they can basically, stuff 72 envelopes of these 3 items exactly, then print out the labels all at once, and then take them out. So I think that's, it's a very interesting problem. Like, again, if you're normally doing e-commerce, you're just doing orders as they come in, right? You're just sort of trying to do it. But with crowdfunding, if you have even 100 or 500 or 1,000 orders, you're going to need to do them in batches. I mean, a human being can, if you only got one guy, can do between 300 and 500 orders a day. So speeding that up by that level of speed can really just help make your life a lot easier and figure that out. And it also, the ridiculous thing is it saves a lot of people a lot of money because, to some degree, it's like some people are like, yeah, I just took 1,000 packages to the post office, and you're like, the post office has like literally like 50% markup on many package size. I mean, it's like a lot of money, and we're talking like, even with discounted rates, people are spending 20% of their Kickstarter raise on just postage.
Wow,
so
that's crazy.
It's huge. It's huge thing that just like, again, it's just another place where we can help you like not make mistakes with BackerKit, to some degree, like that are going to cost you a lot of money, which is why to some degree, I mean, BackerKit's a bargain because it costs some money out of pocket, but it's going to
compared to what it would be if you were to do it on your own, it'd be a lot.
Yeah, and just trying to like minimize the mistakes and trying to do it. We've just done a lot of the work for you. I mean, at this point, we've done like 500 projects, big and small, and like, don't walk through those potholes again.
Yeah, that's great, man. So that one promotion though that I was talking about, what I didn't think I got it completely. What was it that?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, part of because we're really hands-on with all of our customers. I mean, we're really available. Part of our fee is like a setup fee, but it's actually if you commit to using BackerKit while your campaign's still going, we'll actually waive half of the setup fee. So that's basically like free $150 from us. Not to mention that we can also get the ball rolling and make sure everything's right and perfect for you guys, and that just makes your life a lot easier.
Cool, awesome, yeah. I'll be sure to list that also on the site so people can.
Cool, sounds good. Cool.
Yeah, well, those are most of the questions I had. If you think of anything I'd like to add for the blog post, feel free to let me know, and I'll include it there.
All right, sounds great. I'll also give you a link that will give people like an extra little bit off, so you have some. Try to maybe generate some extra buzz. Special link for people who check out your blog.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much. Appreciate you taking the time and
Yeah, no
Got the
problem.
technology working. So
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
okay, it was nice
All
talking
right.
to you.
Keep posted. Bye bye.